I'm Josh Rivers. I am the creator and host of Busy Being Black, the podcast exploring how we live in the fullness of our queer Black lives.
And do you have any idea what you're getting yourself into?
I have no idea. I purposely didn't come in with any clearly defined ideas because I think when we just dive in and we're open, stuff happens. So let's see. I'm excited.
I can coach you on anything you want to be coached in, and I'll only go where you want to go. I will never take you somewhere where you don't want to go.
Well, let's go deep.
A word to the mother. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So when I'm communicating with someone, there's no distance. There's nothing I need to guard. There's nowhere I need to get to. I'm just completely free to be myself. And I'm kind of belonging to that conversation as it opens up and it opens up. I begin to get more and more of who I am and more who that person is. So one could say that communication is love. Yeah. Like you're connected, right? And there isn't any retribution there. There's only what's there, right? And that's where real creation begins. That's where leadership unfolds. That's where people are uniquely themselves. And when there's talking, there's a difference. There's a very different quality. So when I'm talking, what's happening is my emphasis is what's going to come out of my mouth. I'm not really listening to anybody. I'm preparing what I'm about to say. I'm coming up with the performance that will have me get what I want. It's more about convincing people. It's about manipulation. It's about getting somewhere. Has a very distinct quality to it. And by the way, you'll know you're not communicating because there's no connection at all. It is all emphasis on the talking itself, not on the communication. I want you to start to share with us a place where you haven't been able to make it work. And it's important to you to have it work. And I'm not limiting you to anything. It can be any situation where you weren't able to get the end game to make sense. It's where there was a misunderstanding or you were taken advantage of somehow or exploited somehow. And you couldn't get your footing. And then we're going to kind of play around with that and assess the conversation and see what we come up with.
It's so interesting because on the podcast, I end by asking my guests, what do you hope for? And they go, what do you mean? And I say, well, it's purposefully broad, right? So that whatever needs to come up will come up. And I've never actually, what you've asked is quite broad. And I was thinking, oh, that's what it feels like. I think, I think what happened last year, which I still don't really have the language to.
Just tell me what happened. Let's just start with the fact.
So when I was fired from Gay Times for things I tweeted years before, I was trying to figure out why I was most upset. It was all very public. Lots of people had lots of stuff to say about who I was and who I'd become or who I hadn't become. And it's crazy to see people misinterpret, or rather interpret quite appropriately, who they think you are. Right? And to know that everything I had worked for, every change I had made, every bit of progress I had fought for, just in my own life, didn't matter in that moment, right? It didn't matter. Right? It didn't matter that I had changed and evolved and grown. Like, it didn't matter. Nobody cared, right? It was just like, you made a mistake and that's it. You are the sum of your mistakes. And it's the biggest miscommunication of my life so far, right? Like, and what was devastating about that moment was that people that I'm here to serve, right? The people who I had figured out, like, oh, I'm here to serve queer people. I'm here to serve queer people of color. I'm here to help advocate and innovate for our change, for the place that we deserve in the world. That's my mission. That's my purpose in life. To know that this moment called into question whether or not they could trust me.
Yeah.
Like, that was devastating. It wasn't the publicity of it all, which is embarrassing, it's humiliating, but it was the question I asked myself, like, how am I going to earn that trust back?
Yeah.
How
That's
am I
good.
ever going to do that? Because
That's good.
earning trust is far harder
Yeah.
than like crafting a good name for yourself in the media, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about communications, it's like, oh, this we can craft and we can shape and we can hide the stuff we don't like, but that's not how trust is built, right?
No.
Like, you don't earn trust by being deceitful. You don't earn trust by not having all your flaws out and by not being truthful and honest. And so, because of the things that I said when I was younger, I thought, and because everybody said nobody's gonna trust you again, that was the thing. I was in my head. I was like, I'm never gonna be able to earn this trust back. I'm never gonna be able to.
Well, let's underline that one thing you just said. I got in my head,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
See, some of the best things that can happen to a human being is a mistake. Because the mistake is the door to the new opportunity.
It's hard to see that in the moment,
It's
though.
hard to see that in the moment. Let's go back and look at the communication itself, okay? Because one thing I do know is there's nothing that cannot get resolved in communication. Nothing. So you made the error and you said something that really didn't work. But the breakdown isn't just that. When you retreat, now there's no opportunity to clean up anything.
Oh, it's the retreat. Yeah.
It's the retreat.
Mm.
So we all make mistakes. So how old were you when you made this mistake? How many years ago was it?
Like 7, 8, 9 years ago, 10 years ago.
Right,
Mm.
right. And tell me what you said and why you said it.
I don't like.
And I want you to stay with me while you're doing this, because you'll start to see some things newly today just by being with me about that moment that we can get this thing complete today.
I don't like repeating what I said, and so I won't.
You may not have to do that,
Yeah.
but what
What-
provoked you to be that inappropriate? What happened? Something happened. I mean, I read the tweet, so something provoked that. So what happened that had you snap like that?
I think it is many things, right? It is, when I look back, and I try not to look back too often on that time, and I think about just how lonely and angry and confused.
Now, just before the camera started going, you were very open. You
Mm.
notice you're not as open right now? Do you notice that?
It's hard to. What we're talking about is a period of 2012, for example. I there was a day in September.
Okay.
It was the end of September. It was the first time I remember waking up where I couldn't lift my head off the pillow.
Huh.
Couldn't physically do it. Couldn't. Nothing. Nothing I tried worked. And I just cried.
What was happening?
It was the relationship I was in. It was the confusion I felt. It was the drugs I was doing. It was the alcohol. It was everything. Like everything. And I woke up that morning and I thought, I'm gonna kill myself. Like, if I don't get out of this situation, I will die. There's no other way out of this. I will either I have to leave physically where I am, like I have to leave the country, I have to find some sort of change, or I'm gonna kill myself because I can't deal with.
All right, now stay with me. Stay with me. I'm gonna ask you some more questions. Okay, and you're just gonna stay with me. It's fine. It's gonna work out. So, what was the thing that you needed to get away from? And you just kind of just communicate. You don't have to say names.
Me.
Just, and tell me about the me that you no longer wanted to be, or the me that you couldn't stand anymore. What were you putting up with and dealing with?
Just like this, I felt like I was this guy that couldn't do anything for himself, and not like I couldn't wash myself. I mean, like couldn't think for himself. Couldn't Was like sitting on all this anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like here,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't have any way to talk about what constitutes that anger, like what makes it, right? Like how do you release not, and you don't even know where it begins, right? Like it's, and so because I didn't know how to talk about it, and it was just sitting there, and I thought
Okay.
that it's that, right? It's just this. It feels like an inexplicable weight that I felt at the time. That was, I think, anger. That was all the things I wasn't talking about.
Okay. Now, tell me the things you were angry about.
My dad,
Okay. Tell me about your dad.
um, his absence, not his physical absence, but his emotional absence.
Hmm.
You know, he told me one time that I talked just for the sake of talking.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I must have been 13 or 14.
Oh.
Because we were living in California. No, so I was older. We were living in California, so I was 15. And it was around the time I was getting grounded all the time because I was acting up. And his grounding me was putting me in my room for weeks at a time, with no one to talk to. And so I would come out to clean because I could do chores, but I couldn't do anything else. And I would have written all this poetry, and I would be reading it to my mom. And he said, "You talk just for this talking." And I just thought that was cruel, right? Like, why would you say that? Why would you say? I still don't get it. Um, there was a sexual assault when I was 17.
Who did that?
My boss at work.
Huh.
Mm.
Did you tell your parents?
No, 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 no. I didn't tell anybody. And I didn't talk about it for until I was 28, 29. Like never mentioned it. And
Hmm.
there was the fact there's a lingering resentment I still have about being a gay black man in the world and how I was completely unprepared for that. Like I left home at 18 and felt completely devastated by the world. Completely. Like how do you send kids out into the world not knowing?
Mm-hmm.
I, don't- I still don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get how I could have been so unprepared. It's all of that, right? It's all of
Yeah. It's all the angst of being human,
yeah, right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Not
I
unique,
mean,
but yeah.
yeah. And I think we do live in a world that's indifferent.
Not indifferent. It's not.
I don't mean it like people are indifferent. I'm talking about we live in a world that rains on everybody when it rains.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when it snows, it snows on everybody. And when the sun comes out,
Yeah.
the sun comes out on everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then and here's the real truth of it too. We live in a world right now that so much is happening all at once. It's very difficult to make sense of things. So you have a constant barrage of information, conversations,
And who
stuff
you
on
should be,
TV.
and what you should strive for, and how to.
Yeah, it's too much. It's almost like how do you figure out anything when there's such a plethora of everything,
You're right.
right?
Or, yeah. But how do you figure out what's yours? Right? Like, what's mine?
That's
What
right.
what is my singular effect? And I'm very, I'm very introspective. I think a lot. I didn't used to be like this, right? But I've become like this. I've leaned into the intellect. I've leaned into the mind spirals I go into. I've learned that these are good things for me, right? Because I always come out of them. And that's one of the things I think all the time, even now, is like I feel like I have more of a sense of direction, but why? Right? Like that's why? Like, what is my singular like? I feel so beaten up all the time, and it has nothing to do with last year. As part of it.
No, I'll tell you what I think it is. So communication itself, when you have when you deliver on an authentic communication,
Mm.
it's complete.
Right, but to
I
who?
made right, so it's like it has such a simplicity to it that it has things be all right the way they are and the way they aren't, because there isn't anything in there about you surviving what you did. It's more about you being responsible for what you did. That what I did in no way, shape, or form truly communicates who I really am. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to restore my integrity for as long as it takes, where people start to get the real me instead of the me that deflects people and pushes people off
Mm.
because I'm not clear.
But who
And
decides the integrity, right?
you do.
Me.
Yes, you do. And I think that's what your journey is right now,
Mm.
is you're getting clear about who I am. I messed this up, but one of his great philosopher, I can't remember if it's Plato or Socrates, but he says, know thyself.
Yeah.
And that's the highest level of integrity, is knowing yourself. And it takes something to know yourself when you're inundated with a lot of ideas.